Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. It's the post-game pod for the Timberwolves OT win over the Pelicans. No, they should not have needed overtime, but they did, and Ant dropped 44. We'll talk about what happened to get them to overtime and what was so brilliant about how the Wolves played down the stretch. It's all coming next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy Hump Day. And it's a victory Wednesday. Timberwolves pulled out an overtime win over the New Orleans Pelicans. Yes, the now 3-19 New Orleans Pelicans on Tuesday night. The Cliff Notes. Yes, it's too bad they had to go to overtime to beat a Zion-less Pelicans team that had only won 3 games all season. That is not good. Yes, they were down by a ton of points at halftime. They were down, they gave it 43 points in the second quarter. Minnesota was down 10 at halftime against a completely, to this point in the season, a feckless Pelicans team, the only team that's fired their coach. Like, all these things are true. Bottom 5 offense, bottom 5 defense. But Anthony Edwards still played the entire second half in overtime, dropped 44 points despite being double-teamed pretty much when he crossed the timeline all night long. And they still got heroic overtime performances from Julius Randle and Jaden McDaniels with big plays down the stretch in regulation. We'll get into all that. It can all be true. It's frustrating that they had to go to overtime against this team. And I said on the show yesterday, I thought they'd win this first game easily and Thursday would be the tougher game. Let's hope that this flips it. Let's hope that the Wolves show up Thursday ready to play and they can avoid giving up 142 points to the New Orleans Pelicans in their second crack at the Pels on Thursday night. We'll break down what happened to this one. I want to start with really the end of the game and what happened down the stretch. We'll talk a bit of game flow stuff and a couple other big things. We'll talk about Ant's performance. The Timberwolves zone again made an appearance. We'll talk about big clutch plays down the stretch. That's actually where we'll start here today is Ant, Jaden, and Julius, who really stuck out to me down the stretch in this game. We'll close with studs and duds. A big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. All right. So I want to start with the end of the game, but I don't want to talk really at all about the first half. But I said as much on X last night. The first half was really bad, especially defensively. The offense was inconsistent, but at least they scored 58 points. The problem is giving it 43 in the second quarter to the Pelicans. That's 68 first half points to the New Orleans Pelicans, getting crushed in the paint. I think it was 40 paint points in the first half, 38, something like that. And the biggest problem, once again, was perimeter defense, containing the ball. And really, we're seeing this a lot here lately. The Spurs did it for profit early in the game the other day. We saw the Kings do it last week, getting switches and attacking Naz Reid and Julius Randle off the dribble, and Rudy Gobert to an extent, although Naz, I think, is the one that's been most susceptible. But it's not strictly that. Ant has had problems containing at times in the perimeter. Conley certainly has. So the perimeter defense, the point of attack defense, this is an area that they really miss Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and it's an area that we're going to talk about. Jalen Clark. He had a big third quarter in this game. I know the box score doesn't show that necessarily unless you look at the plus minus. He was really good. I think you just need more Jalen Clark, and I'll that's what the first half tells me is just you'll figure it out offensively. You still scored 58 points in the half, but goodness, man, you give up 68 the first half to the Pelicans. Something's off on the perimeter, and they just got to stay in front of the basketball. That's my takeaway from the first half of this game. That's really all I want to say about the first half. Second half was actually more about the Wolves obviously did well in the second half. It was more about the Pelicans playing really well. I thought the Pelicans played hard. Obviously impressive. Jeremiah Fears was very good in this game. He's been impressive mostly as a rookie. Derek Queen is very good. And was unafraid of the moment. Not that the moment was too big, but for these guys are 19 and 21, I think, Queen and Fears. Very impressive stuff. I've always liked Saddiq Bey. Trey Murphy, getting him back for the Pelicans was awesome. He's a really legitimately good player and has massive trade value if the Pelicans were to trade him. That's kind of the extent of the NBA talent in the rotation for this team. Obviously, there's guys that can do stuff. There's things about Jordan Hawkins and Jose Alvarado that are nice. But like no Zion. Impressive that this team played as hard as they did in the second half and made it as close as it was. And Minnesota was still down 3 going to the fourth quarter. And then down the stretch, this is where things got pretty interesting. First of all, Reid had played really well to that point. I think it was 3 for 3. His first 3-point attempts of the game was just playing a really great game. So Chris Finch decides to go with a little bit more offense down the stretch and takes Julius Randle off the floor with a little under 3 minutes to play. Minnesota's down 3, puts Nas on the floor. The Timberwolves actually tie the game on an Ant 3, just a massive pull-up 3 after Fears split a pair of free throws. Wolves come down. Gobert commits a silly foul on Saddiq Bey. And, of course, the Wolves I guess that was a shooting foul. And then Ant has the dumb turnover at the timeline. So remember the sequence? Ant hits the 3. Bad shooting foul on Gobert. He couldn't stop himself. His momentum, he ran into Bey. Bey makes both free throws. Then at the timeline, the Pelicans are pressing up on Ant. I forget who has the ball, and Jaden, I think, had the ball. Ant's trying to come back to the ball right at the timeline at half court, and Jose Alvarado's pressed up against him, like doing the thing where he's essentially touching him with his chest, but his hands are up. And Ant tries to create separation, shoves him in the chest with both hands. Happens on almost every play. It almost never gets called, but because of the moment, because of the situation, and because of Alvarado's accentuation of the contact, and it was a foul, to be clear, letter of the law, that is a foul. No matter what level of basketball, it's a foul. The thing that gets me, it's like holding in the NFL, is like, why don't you call it the other 99 times it happens, and then it happens in this big moment, and the player is dramatic about it, and so now we're calling it. At any rate, it is a foul. It gets called for it. Terrible mistake by Ant. And then the Pelicans come right back, get a dunk from Derek Queen, and it's a 4-point game with a minute to play. The Wolves come down, push the pace. DiVincenzo misses right at the front of the rim, just misses a finger roll. This is at the 49-second mark. So 49 seconds, miss layup from DiVincenzo. Pelicans coming in the other way. In that moment, I was like, all right, it's over. This is it. They did it again. They melted at the end, this time against just a horrendous opponent, a bad team, most losses in the NBA, missing their best player. And they melted down at the end after coming all the way back from a 10-point halftime deficit, losing, trailing by however much they trailed by at one point. I think they were down by as many as 15 in this game. And here they are. They're going to kick it away, and DiVincenzo misses the layup. But then coming back the other way, Jose Alvarado giveth and taketh away. DiVincenzo just strips the ball from him in the open floor, kicks it ahead to Jaden, who could have passed the ball to, I forget who it was, probably Gobert near the rim. There was somebody in the opposite corner. And instead, Jaden shoots one of his tough little fallaways from like 6, 7, 8 feet and makes it. I think he banked it in, if I remember right. And now it's a 2-point game. Just a massive shot. First of all, onions to take the shot, as Bill Raftery would say. Hopefully you're familiar with Bill Raftery from March Madness, the call on CBS. Onions from Jaden to take that shot. He made it. It's now a 2-point game. The Timberwolves defend well on the other side of the floor. 12 seconds left. They come back the other way. And this is the situation where Chris Finch has 2 timeouts in his pocket, and everyone I know, all of Twitter at least, all of Wolves Twitter for sure, is watching this and screaming, you have 2 timeouts, call timeout, call timeout. But like it's a basketball coach most of the time, unless it's a micromanaging college coach, is going to let the play out in a broken floor situation, because when should you get the best shot? At the rim, open 3-pointer, get fouled at the rim. It's in transition. Now, it doesn't happen all the time, but I understand letting it play out. As soon as things bogged down on the right side of the floor, Chris Finch ran out on the floor and called the timeout, which was absolutely the right way to handle it, 100% the right way to handle it. 7 seconds left, Minnesota's down 2. Sideline out of bounds play from the sideline opposite the Wolves bench. They get it to Ant, and Ant feels the Pelicans pushing him to his right hand. And I was credit to Ant for not just stopping and pulling up and shooting a 3 that could have been the game would have been the game winner if he'd made it. He didn't settle. He drove to the basket. The Pelicans didn't help. Saddiq Bey had his back turned to the action. They were, I guess, worried about somebody coming off a pin down and getting outside the arc to shoot a 3 to win the game. And Ant just drove right to the cup. It was a relatively easy layup. This is why the Pelicans are the Pelicans this year. So that ties the game. The Wolves play good defense on the other end, and it goes to overtime. Rudy does a really good job on Derek Queen. Goes to overtime tied. And really, overtime is just all about Julius Randle. We'll talk a little bit about that and kind of put a bow in the rotation decision here, and then get into a couple other things that stood out to me in this game. We'll talk about the zone. We'll talk about Jalen Clark, and then we'll close the show today with individual studs and duds. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at Game Time. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. And that's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment that they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to events like the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. It's simple. You just pull up the app. The layout makes it super simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views. You pick the game you're interested in, tap a section, you have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion and no hunting for fine print. The best part, I think, is the prices include the fees up front. So there's no last-second surprises at checkout. You can also set alerts for your favorite teams and matches that you're interested in to make it easy to grab tickets the moment they drop instead of missing out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets, including to the World Cup and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time. Big thank you once again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen of the day. And also a big thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network could not do this without you, the loyal listener, those of you that put us first every day in your podcast queue. It is genuinely greatly appreciated, and we thank you for that. All right. So overtime, the Wolves just actually played really hard in overtime. And Julius Randle came back out on the floor after sitting the last 3-4 minutes of game time, which obviously was closer to, 10, 12 minutes of real time, getting a massive rest. Ant never sits, by the way. I should have said this. I think I mentioned it. He didn't sit in the fourth quarter, and it was, he said after the game, he told the coaching staff he did not want to come out. He usually sits the start of the second quarter, start of the fourth quarter. Did not sit in the second half or overtime. Julius comes back in the fourth quarter after not playing the final 3 minutes of regulation. And, I mean, the Pelicans immediately take a lead. Julius Randle then comes down, gets fouled, makes a couple of free throws. Fears misses a three. Randle hits another shot. Ant hits a shot. Then Randle scores again, and then Randle basically puts the game away. Or I guess he pushes it to 6 points with a little over a minute to play. And then it was, at that point, just like a weird, cherry pick fest of, Gobert and Saddiq Bey making dunks back and forth. Gobert made 3 dunks in the last minute. It was absurd. But Randle in overtime had, what did he score? 8 points? 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, he had 8 points in overtime. And it was obviously just completely gassed in that final couple of minutes. I think he was fine early in overtime, as fine as one can be after playing as much as he did in the second half. And so just an incredible close for the Timberwolves. And Julius Randle is a huge piece of that. And also I credit Chris Finch for the rotation decisions he made toward the end of the game. I think the pace of the game, it made sense to have Naz out there. Now, Naz didn't shoot the ball well in the fourth quarter for as good as he was. And I had in my notes, Naz Reid is essential when the Timberwolves are making their comeback in the third quarter, scoring 42 points in the third, coming out hot early in the fourth quarter, because Naz Reid was a massive part of that. He made a bunch of threes early, kept the Wolves in the game, kept them, up to the scoring pace that the Pelicans were scoring at, the pace the Pelicans were scoring at. But he missed 3 big threes late in the game, including in that last stint in the fourth quarter. He missed one right after he came out on the floor with Minnesota down 2. He missed an open 3-point attempt, and the Pelicans came the other way up 2. It happens. But I also think it was the right rotation decision for Chris Finch, and then to bring Randle back rested in overtime worked out really well. And so the Timberwolves' top 6 guys, the starters plus Naz Reid, all played 32 minutes or more, and nobody else played more than 15. That breakdown works depending on opponent, and it actually was necessary against, even without Zion, against Derek Queen was really good, right? And there's also other functional bigs on this team. Bey is more of a small ball type 4, but he's a decent player. Kevon Looney wasn't great off the bench, but he's an NBA body. This team had, and the way that they play also, I talked about this on yesterday's show, previewing the matchup, the offensive rebound rate, even without Zion, you had to be aware that was a thing for this team. And ultimately they held the Pelicans to 6 offensive rebounds. Now the points in the paint for playing such a big lineup. This was the other thing I mentioned on X last night. Timberwolves gave up 70 points in the paint. 70. The Pelicans scored 142 points. So basically almost exactly half of the Pelicans' points were scored in the paint. That's miserable. And I blame more the perimeter defense than the actual interior defense. I thought Rudy played a solid game overall. I know the line looks massive, but it was kind of buoyed by the late dunk fest. I should mention, though, with Rudy, and I guess we'll get back to him in Suns and Duds, he made 8 out of 10 free throws, which is a great night for Rudy Gobert. To, first of all, get to the line that often, but then also to make 80% of his free throws. We do not see that very often from Rudy. So kudos to Gobert for that. Excuse me. The rotation decisions from Chris Finch, I thought, were on point. We should talk about Jaylen Clark. I don't think he played enough to hit the stud category, so I want to hit this now. He was a big part of the third quarter. And related, the Timberwolves played zone in the third. Now, I looked at Synergy, and Synergy only credited the Timberwolves with playing one possession of zone defense in the entire game. And I swear they played more than one. I know that they played more than one zone. I think sometimes the zones don't get logged quite correctly. But in the third quarter, especially with Jaylen Clark on the floor and Rudy off the floor, which we talked about a bunch recently on the show, I sound like a broken record, but when Rudy's off the floor, Jaylen's got to be on the floor. And I guess I haven't looked at the exact kind of overlap of their minutes. I think that was generally true. I mean, Rudy played 38 minutes in this game of a possible, 53 in an overtime game. So it's actually pretty close. Jaylen Clark played 15 minutes. So I should go back and look at the exact overlap. But I think it's very important to have Jaylen Clark on the floor and Rudy's off the floor. And depending on who else is on the floor and the opponent, and in the case of the Pelicans, who are generally not a good three-point shooting team, although they shot it very well in this game, playing zone makes a lot of sense. And I know that they played it more than the one possession showed on Synergy. And that's possession, by the way, that was logged, included a tough Jeremiah Fears 3. Ant got a little, didn't quite get to where he needed to, didn't extend quite enough on the zone. There was dribble penetration that led to a kick-out 3 for Fears. But the Wolves zone has been really effective the last couple of games. And Jaylen Clark is a big part of that. He's a hound at the top of a 2-3 zone. And just is in general. I mean, I mentioned this earlier. He had the second best plus minus on the team. He was a plus 11, knocked down a pair of threes. By the way, was more than willing to shoot in this game. And the Timberwolves coaches, no doubt, have been on top of Jaylen Clark. Like, hey, man, if you've got the shot, you got to shoot it. You got to keep defenses honest. Because here's the thing. Like, I've said this on the show a bunch. Jaylen Clark probably is not a 40% three-point shooter. He was last year, but the college track record of what was it, like around 30% at UCLA, suggests he's not. The small sample in the G League suggests he's not. The small sample last year was 43%, but remember, it was 96 attempts, I think, is what he shot last year. No, not even that. 51 attempts in the regular season last year for Jaylen Clark. Why did I think he shot more threes than that? So total last season, he was 22 of 51. That's not enough attempts, but it's 43%. This year, he was shooting right around 32, 33%, but now he's been good the last couple games. He's up to 37%. I don't know that I think 37% is probably a realistic target for him to shoot for the year. That's right around league average. If that's where he ends up, that's awesome. But he has to be willing to take the shot and not automatically pass. And in this game, he had a hair trigger on his jumper. He was ready to go. And that's a huge part. That adds another element because teams can't completely forget about him because they know if he hits this at 37% of the time, if he's wide open, he's going to hit it at a higher clip than that. And teams are going to at least close out, they're going to, green close out too. They're at least going to pay attention to him instead of ignore him. That's important for him to be able to do that. And he did it. And again, defensively, he was very good. He was the best of that trio of guys who are trying to get that 8th spot, Clark, Shannon, and Dillingham. Now, Dillingham only played 7 minutes. Shannon only played 8. I thought they were both fine in this game. Dillingham, less so. I know TJ Shannon's plus minus was much worse than Rob Dillingham. Small enough minute sample that worries me less. And Dillingham did have 2 assists and no turnovers, but just missed another layup. Might have missed 2 layups. He missed a layup and he missed a free throw line jumper. Like, those shots just have to go in if Dillingham's going to take them. And I think the process is still mostly good. It's just he's not making the shots, which is not what you'd expect. And maybe that comes with confidence and more playing time, and at least he is seeing the floor. He's just got to break out in one of these games to earn more minutes, and it's a bit of a catch-22 situation, obviously, with Dillingham and his playing time. But for the most part, I thought Chris Finch did a good job with the rotation in this game. I thought the Nas and Randle, the way it was handled late in the fourth quarter and overtime was good. I thought the Jaylen Clark minutes were very, very good in this game. And the zone, when the Wolves played it, was solid. All of that was impressive. Let's see. We talked about Nas. We talked about also in the third and fourth quarter, the Timberwolves had these big runs where they got back in the game, and the Pelicans pushed back. That was more the Timberwolves' perimeter defense being bad in this game, and the Pelicans playing hard. That was really the whole second half. But Minnesota had these pushes that's like, okay, now they're going to take control. Adults are in the room, and then the Pelicans would push back. And that's a credit to the Pels, their stick-to-itiveness, their ability to kind of keep getting back up off the mat and pushing, and then also an indictment on the Timberwolves defense. We talked about the execution late. Ant was great down the stretch, getting to the rim in overtime. So those are all my big things. I want to close by talking individual studs and duds. We'll dig in on a couple of those stat lines and individual players. We'll do that next year, and that's how we'll close out the show today. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets change the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play. You decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. All right, let's close today with individual studs and duds. Obviously, Anthony Edwards is number one. He was amazing in this game. Some of the perimeter defense stuff a little shaky. I'm not going to nitpick that. He was by far not the only one. Across the board, the perimeter defense was bad for Minnesota. Anthony Edwards was phenomenal offensively. The Pelicans were throwing two bodies at him. I mean, first of all, like the Alvarado case where Ant got called for the offensive foul right there at half court in a big moment. That was his biggest mistake of the game. Like that was happening too. Like guys were pressing up on Ant. It was their big moment to try and stop Anthony Edwards and this team that's gone to the conference finals 2 straight years and the whole thing. The Timberwolves are getting like, even though they're not the Thunder, they're not Jokic, they're not the Lakers with Luka, right? But teams are still giving the Wolves their best shot most nights because they're still a really good team that's been to 2 straight conference finals, and they have Anthony Edwards, a consensus top 6 player in the NBA. That happened in this game. Like guys like Alvarado are pressing up on him when he doesn't have the ball. And then you get the double teams that were happening pretty much right when he crosses the timeline. And Ant was splitting double teams all night. He was finding the open guys. He was passing the ball out of the double, getting off the ball and getting the ball back. It's what we saw him do a lot late last year that worked really well. Getting off the ball early, coming back to it. And the whole moving without the ball thing is a foreign concept a lot of the time to star players. And with Ant, it's fits and starts. But when he's doing it, when he's getting back to the ball because of the motion in the half court, that's profit for Ant and for the Timberwolves offense. He scored 44 points on over 50% from the field, 16 of 30 from the field, 6 of 13 on threes, which is fantastic at that volume to make 6 threes, including that massive one down the stretch in regulation that tied the game. So on twos, he was 10 of 17. A good number. Got to the line 8 times, 6 of 8 at the free throw line. We'll take that. 5 boards, 4 assists, 3 turnovers, one of them being that big one at half court, the push off. He had 1 block in this game. A very impressive performance from Ant. He was a plus 14 in 47 minutes. He only sat 6 minutes out of a possible 53 in this overtime game. Probably, I think, his best performance of the season. Certainly his best. I know it was his season high in terms of scoring. It was also efficient. So certainly his best offensive game, no question, and very impressive. The Timberwolves needed him. They obviously don't win this game without Ant's heroics down the stretch, really throughout the second half. Jaden McDaniels, for me, was the second star for the Timberwolves. We talked a little about him toward the top. But the timely shot making, that shot he made at the end of regulation alone was massive. But he also was 7 of 10 in this game, 3 of 3 outside the arc. A perfect 3-point shooting night from Jaden McDaniels. And we're going to talk a little bit about this on Thursday's show. The Jaden's shooting so far this year is just off the charts. Is it real? Is it not? It's impossible to say. But I wanted to talk about this before he turned in this 3 for 3. But Jaden right now is shooting 48%, 47.8% on threes this season. 3 of 3 in this game. Just crushing it from the corners. Had 4 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and a block. He was probably the only guy that looked like a plus defender in this game, other than some moments from Rudy. But a really good game from Jaden for sure. And then my last stud, it's got to either be Naz or Rudy. I know Rudy put up the big number. I'm going to go Naz Reid. Naz had 18, 6, and 5, plus 3 steals. And I know we missed some big threes at the end of the game, but the Wolves don't actually keep it this close. As embarrassing as that sounds, they don't actually keep it within 10 at halftime if Naz wasn't as good as he was in the first half. Like, Ant was good offensively. He wasn't as good as he was in the second half, but nobody else came to the party early. Rudy can't do what he does unless somebody gets him the ball. Offensively, at least, and the offensive glass was pretty good for Rudy in this game. But like Naz was as I said earlier, I had in my notes, Naz is essential in this game. 18 points on 6 of 12, 4 of 8 shooting from outside the arc. Made his first 3 3-point attempts, which was monstrous at the time. Those count the same as they do down the stretch, even if they aren't as magnified. 6 assists, 5 boards, 3 steals for Naz, and was a +5 off the bench in 32 minutes. Was the only bench player besides Jalen Clark, who only played 15 minutes, to have a positive plus-minus. Really nice performance from Naz. No duds for me. I know Dillingham didn't shoot it well. I know TJ Shannon had a bad plus-minus. I thought they both played okay. Given the circumstances, the perimeter defense was still shoddy, but again, across the board, that was an issue for Minnesota in this game. Julius was fine. Was a monster in overtime. I mean, what did I say? He scored 8 in overtime, I think. He only had 16 in the game. So he had 8 points going into overtime. So I also don't want to miss. I want to credit Chris Finch for going back to Julius Randle. I didn't see if he talked about this at all post-game, if he was asked about it. But to go back to Julius Randle in overtime, who had only 8 points at the time, after Naz was so good for most of regulation. But in my mind, and I don't know this, but the calculus is probably, hey, look, it's overtime. These guys are tired. We should be able to overwhelm them, overpower them. Julius has relatively fresh legs, having only played coming into overtime 28 minutes and scored just 8 points. He's going to want to get his and be active, and he could. Like Jeremiah Fears was not going to be able to guard. Saddiq Bey was not going to be able to guard Julius Randle. So he finishes with 16 and 6, 5 boards, and the 6 assists is, when I say 16 and 6, 6 assists, 5 boards. He led the Timberwolves in assists, or tied with Naz to lead the team in assists, which, by the way, is both proves the point of why the Timberwolves are trying to function without a real point guard most of the time, because Randle and Naz can both distribute. And it also shows, like, it'd be nice to have another guy who can handle the ball and create for others on this roster. But anyway, DiVincenzo, another typically solid performance. 15 3-point attempts for DiVincenzo in this game. 5 of 15. Like, obviously, you'd love to see him be 7 of 15 or even 6 of 15. But 15 of his 16 shot attempts were threes. The 1-2 he missed, the layup at the rim down the stretch that nearly ended the game for the Timberwolves. But a solid performance from Dante, per usual. All right, that's all we got for you today here on the show. I'll be back tomorrow. I do want to dig in. I think I'm going to play a little Is It Real? Is it Fake? Quarter poll edition. The Timberwolves are now 21 games in on an 82-game season, so we're officially a quarter of the way through the schedule. And we'll talk about some individuals. We'll talk about some team trends. I may save some of them for, let's see, this is Thursday's show. Well, yeah, I guess there's a game Thursday, so Friday will be a post-game pod. I may break it into 2 parts and hit some of these early next week as well, because I've got a lot that I want to get to. We'll talk about some individual trends, some team trends. Is it real? Is it fake? What's surprising? What's not this early in the season, or really at the quarter pool of the season, right? So we're moving into the mid-season kind of quadrant, or I guess the middle third, middle half, I guess, of the season. Between the quarter polls, the 1 quarter and the 3-quarter poll is where so much stuff is going to happen here. The Timberwolves schedule gets harder a little bit after the first of the year, so important to bank some of these wins, and let's try and find out what we can about this team by digging into the numbers from the first 21 games. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A big thank you once again for making the show your first listen. You can make your second listen the fantastic Locked On Fantasy Basketball Show with our guy, Josh Lloyd. He'll give you daily tips, help you win your league, all while making you a smarter NBA fan. Find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Of course, this show is also part of that very same network, your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.